welcome to this last session of Special No Talks held live from the London Book Fair 2024. Whether you are joining us from London or tuning in online via Zoom, we are very happy to have you join us. Today's session will explore this intersection or this creativity / design and sustainability nexus. As we stand at this intersection, our talk today is necessary. We find it really necessary as it speaks to the global context. And it is my distinct pleasure to introduce our dear speaker, Professor Lucy Kimball, who is a light in contemporary design practices at Central St. Martin's at the University of the Arts, London. We're very fortunate to have you, Professor Lucy, with us. And before I hand the stage over to you, please allow me to introduce some housekeeping remarks. So I think our audience already knows the drill, but for new joiners, so this session will be held fully in English with interpretation being available into Arabic and French. So you can just tap on the globe on the bottom of your screen. If you don't have the globe showing, you just need to log out, then log in again. And if you are facing any technical issues, please make sure to drop them in the Q&A box. Also, there will be a Q&A session after Professor Lucy's presentation, and we'll be happy to take all your questions. So make sure to populate the box meanwhile. Now, without further ado, I'll hand the stage over to Lucy for an enlightening presentation. I'll leave the floor to you, Lucy, and I'll be back for the Q&A session. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, Stephanie. And good morning, assalamu alaikum, and bonjour. First, let me express my thanks to UNDP and the Mohammed bin Rashid Al Maktoum Foundation for inviting me to join you today from the London Book Fair. And like those organizations, I share a commitment to knowledge, to learning, to evidence, ever more important in a conflicted world we are in. Today, I'm going to share some perspectives from research and practice in design in relation to living within planetary limits. A quick introduction to add to myself. I work, I'm clicking the wrong thing. I work at Central St. Martin's in this building here, right in the centre of London. Central St. Martin's is one of London's historic art and design colleges, part of University of the Arts London, which in total has around 20,000 students covering all aspects of art, graphic communication, product design, fashion, textiles, architecture, performance, film, animation, and so on. And in this talk, I'm going to consider some of the legacies and some of the possibilities associated with those kind of creative practices rooted in the global north, industrial consumption and production and resource extraction, and also look ahead at what the future might hold for design practices. And a question that underpins the talk is the extent to which does design have something distinctive to offer to address the challenges of living within planetary limits. And by design, I'm going to particularly focus on the kinds of things that are within my institution, product design, communication, and so on. And these sit alongside other kinds of design, which are kind of organized differently, like engineering design, architecture, and computing. And at first glance, we could see that design, that kind of professional design, is actually linked to the negative consequences of consumerism and resource extraction. And this is because designers pay very close attention to and manipulate the forms of objects. And this results in human beings having feelings, having desires, having wants that they didn't have before. So let's take product design. One example is from product design is this beautiful object here, this lemon squeezer by Philippe Starck. And it's one of many cases of a designer's taking an ordinary household object to squeeze lemons and turning it into something desirable, something special, something you put on display, don't hide in your cupboard, that you use to demonstrate your good taste. And on the one hand, making objects that are ordinary like this, making them beautiful and desirable, might mean you don't throw them away. But on the other, product design is very closely tied to consumerism, activating desires that we didn't have before. Like product design, graphic communication design is also very tied to making things desirable through advertising, media, and packaging. And this image comes from some branding work for the car manufacturer Renault. And here you see this logo as if emerging from this beautiful, peaceful lake with lovely mountains. There's no buildings, there's no people, there's no environmental degradation, there's no conflict. And this gives us the impression of harmony and connections to the earth, to nature, which might actually distract us from the significant destructive effects and consequences of petrol-based car usage. This next image is from some retail design work, and these are large tubes of chocolates or sweets in a downtown store. And these forms of these retail draws you in. They are sort of sculptural. They make you sort of accessible, but they also make these ordinary things, these sweets and chocolates, rather special. And again, this retail design takes something that's basically bad for you or bad for your health, very alluring. So I don't want to be particularly negative of these three examples and the designers that have worked on them or the companies, but I want to suggest the more general case that design has often had negative or harmful consequences. And I've used the power of design, these three examples to show the power of design in ordinary life. Ordinary life in the global north. I recognize that it's not like this in many other parts of the world. And I've used these to show how form, something that designers pay special attention to, can be very seductive and compelling and can change how we feel about things. And they help us and arrange for things to have meaning. And I want to explain this a bit more. The image I have here is a photo I took, if I could click on the right thing. Here we go. So this is a photo I took outside an Apple store in New York City, where I happened to be when CEO of Apple, Steve Jobs, died in 2011. And you can see from this photo that people have left Post-it notes and flowers outside a shop, showing their sadness at the death of Steve Jobs. Now, he was somebody who took design very seriously as an innovation capability, as a branding capability, and it's arguable that design made a huge difference in Apple's success. It resulted in people feeling very attached and loyal to Apple's products and services and brand. And so for some people, these attachments were so strong that they wanted to mark his passing, his death, and to feel grief, and they did it in this very public way. And I think this moment helps us understand that design is tied up with meaning making. It helps us see our connections to things and change our connections to things, which we often can't put into words. So because of this power of design, this kind of expertise is now very well built into lots of businesses and also public services, social enterprises, governments, consultancies, and agencies around the world. And here what counts as success is often driving sales, reducing user errors, creating new markets, increasing brand recognition, all these kinds of business metrics. But if those metrics don't include what economists call externalities, if, for example, things about the effect on the environment, then design can be the consequences, the negative consequences of design become invisible. So as a result, some design academics have even made the case design is actually a dangerous kind of professional expertise, kind of hidden in plain sight, very ordinary, sort of spread across different kinds of sectors, but actually quite dangerous because it's so closely tied up with consumption and production through this form-giving powers. And if we followed this line of argument, we might say that design is something we would want to scrutinize very closely and perhaps even regulate. But there's another aspect of design which hints at different ways of changing how people live and the meanings they have, which might reduce the negative impacts on the planet. And this slide shows, those of you can see online, two overlapping circles representing what is and what could be, actualities and potentialities. And it positions design as something in between both. And this way of understanding design, it sees it as having a capacity that helps businesses, society, government work out ways forward, work out ways, things that could be. So form giving does matter here, but the emphasis is on making forms that enable exploration and deliberation about what matters. So I'm going to share some now examples from different parts of the world, particularly the Middle East and Europe that I'm more familiar with, to show this generative capacity, which I've grouped into 4 types. And the first is using design to create products or services to help mediate some of the consequences of environmental change, and by focusing on ecological systems. And this is a project by an architecture practice based in Beirut called the Other Dada. It's a pavilion they created at the Jameel Art Center in Dubai that was opened just before COP28. And in the photo, you can focus on the form that the pavilion takes, which provides some shelter outside the Jameel Art Center. But what you can't see from the image, and you need to sort of understand from the story around it, is that this is a circular design model. It uses sustainable materials and native biodiversity in some of the plants that are on the roof of this structure, to create shelter. And once the pavilion is moved and disassembled, these different parts will be reused in lots of different ways, giving the materials new life and new meaning within other kinds of ecologies. So this is a shift towards a kind of circular or systemic design. Another example of that is by my colleagues from UAL's Center for Circular Design, which has a focus on textiles. They worked very closely for some years with material scientists and business managers to imagine what textiles might be like that had less destructive effects on the planet, and what that might mean for how people related to their clothes and how clothes and textiles could be reused. Another example of how design is working differently, not just about form giving, is this example from the Indian-based design and innovation group called Quicksand. They were asked to help with a project imagining smart cities, what that might mean in an Indian city context, recognizing there might be very different consequences for residents. And what you see here is a cartoon-based illustration. This version is in English, but it was also produced in the Telugu language. And it's a cartoon which helps translate some of the ideas and the proposals about how the city might be different for a broader audience to enable opening up to discussion. This is another example which uses the capacity that designers have to set up processes and structures to enable participants to propose and evaluate new solutions, sometimes called hackathons, although that term's often particularly used for software, but also designathons or sprints or challenge workshops. These are social processes that that diversify who is involved in envisioning futures and potential responses. So this image is an example from Turkey, the Design Innovation Group, Atalia, who has hosted several sprints and workshops bringing people together. This one is connected to emergency responses and resulting from fire. And another example with an international lens is a group called What Design Can Do, where they organized a digital platform and invited people to submit circular design proposals, which received 650 entries, which are now being shortlisted and leading to further development. So what these examples show is the process of designing is opening up to broader set of participants, including residents, stakeholders, and non-specialists, not just people who think of themselves as designers. If I move forward, another category of kind of design work is this work focusing on speculative approaches. This is an example of speculative design in the form of a film made by a British Indian group called Superflux. This film, The Intersection, imagines a world where people's relationships with the planet has changed, and it's a set of stories of different kinds of activists in different parts of the world who have actively tried to reimagine people's relationships with extractive technology and to have a stronger focus on serving communities and supporting nature. So here a film and some objects that were created as part of this project, and then a website and discussion guide do the job of opening up discussion about living within planetary limits. And another project by the same group, which some of you have may have seen if you've been to the Museum of the Future in Dubai. This is Superflux's installation, which has a library, imagines in 2071, the year 2071, a library of specimens, some of which have become extinct, and again, posing questions about what might happen and what we therefore might be able to do now. Oops, sorry, one more. This project here is by one of our Central St. Martin students who studied, recently graduated from the MA Material Futures, Liz Ebengo. And her project looks at what happens alongside ecological destruction. There may also be cultural destruction, where whole ways of life, for example, in low-lying island communities are lost and destroyed because people can no longer live there. So in her project, her speculative project, she proposes using the capabilities of DNA storage to store cultural memories and create and store, in this case, a film and song from a particular community. The final example I want to include is from Electrolux, which is a large appliance manufacturer based headquartered in Sweden. And this is their project GROW, which proposes a new kitchen concept. It's informed by behavioral science research and also research on diets that are both good for people and diets that are also good for the planet. And in this future kitchen concept, they've got not just appliances, but actually new ways of new services in which smart sensors and other kinds of device and AI change the nature of cooking, preparing food, cooking, and which are clearly cultural activities, cooking. So this is again a combination of things which speculate about new ways of doing something we take for granted, such as cooking, which will change. So all of these themes, all of these projects, for example, have in different ways engage with the challenge of living within planetary boundaries. They all involve producing forms, that form-giving quality I started by talking about, but they also do this additional thing of exploring possibilities and opening things up. So form-giving does matter. For example, the comic strip produced by Quicksand in the Indian project, or the film produced by Superflux. But those digital or material things matter in as much as they are part of a mediation between what is and what could be, and opening it up to diverse participants. And this, I think, is what design has to offer in response to the challenges faced in relation to living with planetary limits. So those are all examples from contemporary design practice. Obviously, I've made some selections. There are many other things like this going on in different parts of the world, both by activists, community groups, as well as large businesses, design consultancies, governments, and innovation agencies. And I think that we'll close there. So I just wanted to sort of introduce these topics, and then in the questions, maybe we can look ahead at how this capacity could work in communities and questions you're exploring yourselves. Thank you.
Thank you, Lucy, for that inspiring presentation.
I'm just gonna go to the last slide. There.
Thank you. Thank you for the presentation, and thank you so much for these examples. Many of them really resonated to me. I actually have the squeezer, the Philips Stark squeezer, lemon squeezer, and the other Dada. So with its founder, Adib Dada, the architect, the Lebanese architect, also from my home country, and also the example from the the Future Museum, the Dubai Future Museum. So no, thank you so much for this presentation. We are having many questions from the audience in English, French, and Arabic. And if you have more, please keep them coming. I have selected some of them, and also for some, I'll be leaving them for a quick section for this or that questions. So yeah, actually, so that was like a comment and not a question, that it's clear that the journey towards sustainability, towards sustainable creativity is both challenging and rewarding, and this is very true. And there was now a talk here at the Sustainability Hub in the London Book Fair called "Sustainability is not as easy as it looks." Yeah, so that was just a reflection. Now, in your presentation, you touched upon ethical considerations. So one of the questions was, what do you think is the role of ethical guidelines in design education and practice, especially when balancing innovation with sustainability?
I can talk in a general case. So I'm mostly involved in research rather than teaching at the moment. So what I observe is that the younger generation of students are already coming with this mindset. So they are forcing universities and academics to sort of speed up the process of bringing these questions into the curriculum. And that's a good thing. Within design research, which is where I sit, many of the academics are also involved in quite practically oriented projects dealing with these kinds of negotiations. So I think there is a significant shift going on, and I think the examples I showed tried to demonstrate that it's happening across society, different areas of design expertise. I'll just give you one example. I'm currently co-director of a new doctoral training program funded by the European Union, which is offering doctoral training in 8 universities in 7 countries in design it's called sustainable design. No, what is it called? Sustainable design through sustainable transitions through democratic design. There's apologies. We have a anyway, so it's got lots of jargon in the title, but actually we're trying to do this kind of very practically oriented research, support that, because design has a really important role to play, as I've argued, and it's not just me arguing this. And so design universities, design consultancies, design teams, wherever they're working, and indeed the students are already very much concerned by these ethical considerations about access, different effects and different consequences and different risks. And so there is I think there's a significant shift going on at the moment in design.
Yeah, thank you. Now, considering your examples on speculative designs, how do you envision these conceptual projects influencing real-world policy or consumer behavior changes towards sustainability?
So this is why when I included several of the examples of speculative, because it's interesting to see, an independent group such as Superflux have a long track record of doing this, often working with foundations or clients who are want to work with them in a partnership way. But to actually see a large firm like manufacturing, cookers, washing machines, and so on, doing this as well, using this similar approach of speculation and thinking through for their business, for their supply chain. That's really interesting. So there's a shift underway. And I can also give I didn't include an example, but I can tell you that in the space of policy making, one of my areas of research is policy labs, policy design labs, the use of design in policy making. This is, I'm mostly, forgive me, mostly familiar with European examples, but there are teams using some of these techniques. For example, in the UK Policy Lab, you can find their blog online, UK Policy Lab, where they are using these kinds of speculative design techniques in the making of policy for the UK government. So it's very niche. And it raises interesting questions about methodologies for policy making. But it's definitely, again, a sign that these techniques are powerful, and they allow, through that materialization, through that exploration, to open up the work of exploring the possibilities and consequences.
Definitely. And we have our fingers crossed. Now, how can we integrate human-centric design principles while navigating the complexities of AI?
This is a really good question. I think many of us who have been following these debates are concerned about the different aspects of AI that are concerning the kinds of data that are used, excluding some groups and overrepresenting others. The creation of algorithms that are then trained on that data, leading to algorithms that themselves are biased, the integration of those techniques into decision making without a lot of scrutiny, often the exclusion of civil society or stakeholders from those processes because it's quite a sort of tech-led expertise. So there's many concerns, and obviously in some countries or regional groupings, the regulators are taking this very seriously, and but there is a question about whether the regulators, whether governments have enough expertise to act at the speed that the companies are acting. And meanwhile, we have these things for those of us who have mobile phones, smartphones, they are in our pockets and already in day-to-day life and affecting decisions all the time in often exclusionary ways. So given all of that context, and in which, by the way, I'm not an expert, I'm just following like anyone else with an interest in current developments, where is human-centered? So I think the term human-centered is already being challenged. Many of these examples are more holistic, the human and the human experience, which was kind of buzzwords in design in the 90s and the 2000s, is definitely shifting towards more than human perspectives or whole systems perspectives, recognizing planetary concerns and actually different in different time frames, so future generations, for example. So more than human, human-centered is not necessarily the term that I see people using these days, although of course designers are focusing on how a person will experience the app, the building, the policy. But I think that is in relation to questions of sort of other analytical frames which look at the whole of what something leads to. So I think these things are all in play, and that's a really good question.
Yeah. So now looking ahead to 2040, and by the way, congrats on your upcoming book. What new skills or competencies do you think designers will need to effectively contribute to sustainable transitions and societal resilience?
So I am in my book, I'm imagining 3 future scenarios for professional design. Broadly, they take forward trends that are already there and then intensify them to examine or produce plausible sort of stories for the practice of design itself. At dealing with the ecological crises, recognizing that not everybody's affected equally, recognizing that there will be technological developments, not just AI and the sort of further but other related biomaterials, and so on and so on. There's many developments. So design itself in these 3 scenarios looks quite different. And I suppose that's the purpose of the scenarios as a method, is to open up and say, well, design could look like this. It could have these kinds of practices. It could be institutionalized in these ways. And that then raises questions for educators, so design schools, also for design teams now, about whether they are ready, how they develop those skills, well, what the skills are and how they develop them, and the talent pipeline to deal with some of these hybrid forms of practice that might develop. So that's what the book will set out to explore in a way that, again, similar to the speculative, to open up questions and debates so that we can do some thinking through in the present.
Awesome. And here we have an announcement from the UNDP and MBRF's Knowledge Project on skills. So we have a new initiative called the Future Skills for All initiative that we have recently launched, where we are offering citizens in the Arab States region learning programs together with Coursera, the international learning platform, so they can apply to this program if they wish, and will be sending you emails about that. And there are courses about design thinking, about there's a wide variety of learning programs there to tailor for everyone's needs. So based on your readings and your analysis, what are any emerging trends or signals or tech that you think are promising for sustainable development?
So I tried to illuminate some of this question of the social processes in the examples I gave, the social processes of designing. So if you think about the 19th century, and again, this is generalizing from global North, European and North America. So design is a specialist profession tied to industrialization, making products more attractive, that you could distinguish between them, that they could sell more and so on. And it's a small group of people, basically, right? Then in the 20th century and the early 21st century, with the emergence of new forms of design, interaction design, human-computer interaction, service design, growing awareness of the ecological crisis, and growing democratic challenges to who gets to be involved in designing. So the design field really expands in the last 30 years, by which I mean the professional and academic. And then also sort of versions of it as a capability in organizations for innovation. So design thinking as an example of that, as a more broader innovation capability.
Yeah.
So that's where we are now. But I suppose the trends at the moment are recognized, so I'm sort of taking that forward, is the trends include sort of opening up, or rather breaking down the boundaries between the designer and the user, and between design and use. If you have connected products or places or parts of the built environment, or indeed bodies which have sensors in them, which can produce data about current conditions, send that back to a server, and then algorithms can do some kind of adjustment to change the current conditions. That means the feedback loop to the thing that's being designed and the designer and the user or the person experiencing the design is a much smaller loop. So given that that's a very broad characterization. And it's, of course, there already in, for example, healthcare aspects of smart cities and mobility and so on. But if we take that more generally into domestic items, then I think it's breaking down the barriers of designer, user, design, production and use. And that's one of the trends. And that raises questions about power, expertise, whose voices are considered and taken seriously. And all of these things are in development at the moment. Yeah, exactly. And all of these things are in development at the moment. So I think it raises questions of governance of design. One of the things that I'm exploring in my book is what the consequences might be if there were more regulation for design. If you compare, for example, architecture in the UK and many other countries, it's highly regulated. You have to have not just a particular kind of training, you have to have ongoing professional development. You also have to reach a certain threshold, which is approved and be registered. In the UK, for example, there's an architect registration board, which has 40-something thousand members. To be a designer, there's no equivalent. Anyone can be a designer, right? Now, there are, of course, bodies that represent design. There is a chartered body that is trying to build up in this direction, but it's not got the same regulatory oversight at the moment. And so these things may change, because if we take seriously the damaging consequences for the environment, then some of these things might play out at the level of the profession. They may not, but it's worth considering.
And when are you publishing your book?
Well, hopefully next year. So I'm in the development phase at the moment. Okay. So I'm reading a vast amount of reports already produced by others of future scenarios, trends, and so on. I'm doing interviews with experts. And then in a sense, the fun bit is I'm working with 6 graduates from our university who are from some of our fields, including Liz, whose work I showed today, and they are working with me to create installations of these future studios and then we're making some short films. So we're actually trying to use the form-giving qualities I talked about to actually show what these might look like and what like some of the dilemmas or controversies might be.
Yeah. Okay. Lucy, in your experience, how can designers really more effectively integrate the sustainable practices into their work without compromising on creativity and innovation?
Well, that's a good question. I suppose, how do we assess creativity? What makes something creativity, right? So if you go to an art school version of design rather than say an engineering school or computing, what you understand by creativity might be quite different because you're comparing yourself to, for example, artists or fashion designers, or you're in a world where which glorifies creativity, whereas another way of understanding design, which is not tied up with this sort of Western modernity and industrial production and consumption, might say that the creativity of how some farming is done, or how a village organizes its buildings. This could be incredibly creative, but it isn't valued within the same framework as Westernized modernity. So I would start off by saying, what do we mean by creativity, and recognizing it takes different forms at different places of time and it is valued in different ways. And not to celebrate only the Philippe Starck designers, who of course are highly creative and successful, not to only celebrate them and ignore somebody who's doing some sort of only a small intervention or change that's only visible to people in their immediate community who are not celebrated. So both of these are forms of creativity. Some are more institutionalized, more valued, and tied to economic measurements. So to balance your question about creativity and the need for sustainability, I think that it's like whose visions of the future, whose visions of what matters are being taken seriously, which then poses creativity as an intensely political question. Who decides what creativity is? Who decides what whose creative visions are taken forward? And so these trends towards broadening democratic participation in exploring issues, coming up with solutions, sharing their own solutions, and implementing the solutions broadly is where I think we can find some new answers to that dilemma of a supposed dilemma between creativity versus sustainability.
Okay. We're actually out of time, but before wrapping up, I just want to ask you two this or that questions. So you just need to answer by the first or the second one. When it comes to sustainable design, do you find more value in local or global inspiration?
For me, local. Yeah.
Functionality or aesthetics?
That's too hard. I think aesthetics, again, depending how you conceive of aesthetics. If aesthetics is opening up new ways of thinking, I do think there is a really important value in aesthetics of challenging what assumptions you might even make about functionality. So I'll go with aesthetics.
Yeah. One last one, ecology-centered or human-centered?
Again, this dualism, I find that ecology-centered, right? Ecology includes humans, whereas if we focus on the human, we're excluding other forms of life and the environment. So it has to be ecology-centered.
Thank you, Lucy, so much. We need to wrap up now. We like to keep our sessions short and crisp for people to be more curious, to find out more and look for more information themselves. But let's keep this conversation with our communities, locally, online, everywhere, and really like carry these insights and inspirations in our day-to-day life. Now we're coming to an end. for all, we're ending all the note talks that have been held live from the London Book Fair over the last 3 days, and also the fair is ending today. So thank you for all the speakers who have been with us, and also to our dear audience, interpreters and colleagues at both MBRF and UNDP. We'll be continuing with the series of note talk this year. And that was just the beginning for this year. And we'll see you again after Eid al-Fitr, so towards the end or mid-end of April. Meanwhile, have a blessed Ramadan if you're celebrating. Have a happy Eid al-Fitr and have a happy Easter. Thank you so much, and keep an eye on your emails and our social media and portal, Knowledge for All portal, and social media Knowledge for All one. Thank you so much, and have a wonderful day. Thank you, Lucy, again.
Thank you.